I never have the final answer. I'm always willing to listen and hear what other people have to say. I prefer hearing from people who disagree with me. If everyone agrees with me, I'm not going to get any smarter. But if there's people with different opinions, I have a chance to learn something. Hopefully I'm right and I'll convince them. But every so often they're right and they convince me. Usually it's somewhere in between.
Hi, it's Liz. Welcome to the Capital Coffee Connection podcast. Today, I am with Brad Schneider, Congressman from Illinois, and I'm really excited because I have gotten to know him over the years. And one of the things that I've been trying to do on this podcast is really talk about the heart, the humanity, the home that people come from. And I was thinking while I was preparing that I called him a couple months back and I said, "Where are you?" And he said, "I'm on a trip and I'm with my son." And then when I was doing a little bit of research, I also learned that he had been a little league dad, a father who had coached his sons. And I just was thinking that was a great way to introduce, even though he's a congressperson and out there and fighting for, all of us. At the end of the day, you're a dad. And so that's kind of my way of introducing you, Brad, and saying thank you for joining me on the Capital Coffee Connection.
Liz, thank you. I wake up, I'm a dad. I go through my day as a dad. I go to bed as a dad and a husband.
Yeah,
But family is the most important thing for me, and a son and a brother and an
yeah,
uncle.
yeah. And let me go to that, which is you are in Illinois and you've been there for a long time, but you're originally from Denver, Colorado.
I was born and raised in Denver. My family, two of my grandparents were born in Denver. And so we have deep roots in Denver. But I came to Illinois first for college and then graduate school a few years after that and met my wife, who's from the district, from Glencoe. And we got married in 89, soon to celebrate next month will be 36 years.
Wow.
And we've been in this area ever since.
So you went to Northwestern. Give a cheer out for Northwestern. And then you just got into, I'm going to stay in Illinois.
I fell in love. And, when I count my blessings, I think of things that make me happy, things that make life easy. It's having the right partner in life. And so wherever she is where I'm going to be.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. And we're skipping, but she's also an amazing partner because she puts up with what you have to do, which is travel a lot, be away a
Yeah,
lot. And even when you're back home and you're in the district, you're actually out there with your constituents and serving them and meeting with them. How does
right.
she balance that? And that's a huge support because you couldn't do it without her.
She struggles with it. This is a job. I joke there's 50% of my job is the work I do in Washington, legislative work. 50% of my job is the work I do at home, constituent district work. 50% of my job is campaign and keeping this job. So, yes, that's 150%, which doesn't leave a lot of time for the most important thing, which is family and friends and all that. So you're juggling way too much to do in too little time.
And she's helping you juggle.
She helps and she gets the short straw too many times.
Yeah. Well, I always say behind a strong leader is a powerful, in your case, wife and woman. So I
Right.
love that. I wanted to go back for a second because you coached. What was it? What was it that got you? Because you were always in business or in politics. You also knew that being a coach and being there with your sons was important. How did you understand that? And what was it? Was your dad a coach? Was it just something you understood was a time to bond with your boys?
No, I mean, I coached baseball and basketball in high school and even through college for young people as a camp counselor. So I've always enjoyed working with young people and getting around them that way. There was no question that I wanted to be active in my kids' lives. My dad worked exceedingly hard to provide for his three kids. I'm the oldest of three. I have two younger sisters. And, he often would leave for work before we got up and come back long after we went to bed. And I was in the fortunate position that I could be home. And actually, it was more than that. It was a choice we made with Julie. This was at Julie's urging. I'm going to put urging in quotes. But when we first got married, I was traveling quite a bit. I wasn't home that much. We had kids. Our oldest son is 32. Our youngest son just turned 31 on Friday. And, made the decision that I wasn't going to do a job where I had to travel the way I had been when our kids were young. So it was a conscious decision.
On a side note, I was at Trader Joe's yesterday And the checkout gentleman, we started talking, and I don't know how we got to it, but he started telling me about that his father was his little league coach. He's from Tennessee, and we're
Good.
in New York. And he was just saying, like, he didn't understand it all those years. Like, how is it my dad keeps being my coach? And I said, well, wasn't it wonderful? He goes, he was really hard on me. But now I look back, and because he didn't let me get away with stuff, I was the
Right.
son. But he said, now I look back, he's in his like mid 30s. And he said, and I really appreciate it. And it was just this beautiful moment. And I guess meant to be that we were talking today because it was yesterday while I was checking out. I think that the kids get a lot when their parents are coaching and showing up and they're being there
I
for them.
hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you one other question going back to your childhood. And I've asked all the leaders, did you have a teacher or an administrator or a coach that you think of today as, Brad Schneider, this, leader in America, but still go, oh, I still have in my heart this person that saw me when I was young?
So the answer is there are so many. It's more than just one. It was Mrs. Carpenter in first grade, Miss Hogan in fourth grade. I just go through the list of every year. Third grade, I had two teachers, Leach and Spomer, and Mrs. Leach was the stern disciplinarian. Mrs. Spomer was the kind soul. But all of them inspired me. The one, especially in this work, that stands out in 10th grade, I had an American history teacher, Ralph Remies. And he was iconoclastic, always getting in trouble with the school administration. But he challenged us to question authority. The books he had us read were, I guess, in today's world of book bans and cancel culture, they would have been considered seditious. Back then, we read a little bit on the left, a little bit on the right, and everything in between. When I'm asked the question, who inspired you for your career in politics? There's no question it was Ralph Remies.
And he got you to be a thinker, which I love. And that's kind of going back to this, which is at the end of the day, we need to learn a little from each side and everything in the middle and have conversations. And we don't always have to agree. But
Right.
if we can have healthy debate and we can also see that at the end of the day, I believe as public servants, you and your colleagues do have a goal, which is to help people.
100%. You're just saying on teachers. Dr. Lydeen was my calculus teacher. And I haven't used calculus since I graduated college. But other lessons I learned from Dr. Lydeen as we were using calculus as a framework to see the world, or Dr. Mackey, my physics teacher, senior year of high school. Again, I don't use physics equations in my everyday course of life, but it taught a way to look at the world, and all of those were very valuable.
Yeah, I think those are good ones. So thank you for sharing that with all of us. And then my next question is about advice. What is the best advice you've ever received? And what is the worst advice you've ever received?
I don't have an answer for the the worst advice, mostly because if it's bad advice, I forget about it. And the best advice, there's a lot, and some I don't remember. I give my grandmother credit only because she's no longer with us and can't say she never said it. But you have two ears and one mouth. Use them proportionally. Listen more than you speak. I think is a really valuable lesson. I don't remember who told me, but I talk about this all the time. When you think you have an answer, dig a little deeper. There's always more to learn, and part of that came, my dad gave me a case study from Harvard Business School. And I don't remember if was when I was in high school or college. I ended up going and getting my MBA at Northwestern anyway. But it was a case study about a guy named Louis Agassiz, who was maybe a paleontologist, but it was talking about looking at fossils and studying them and what you saw the first time and looking at it again and understanding a second time from a different angle. And each time you go back and look at that specimen, there's more to see and more to understand. And so I never have the final answer. I'm always willing to listen and hear what other people have to say. I prefer hearing from people who disagree with me. If everyone agrees with me, I'm not going to get any smarter. But if there's people with different opinions, I have a chance to learn something. Hopefully I'm right and I'll convince them. But every so often they're right and they convince me. And usually it's somewhere in between.
Yeah. How well said. And I think my next question is always like, what advice do you give to young people? And in a way, you really just answered that by what you just said, which is sometimes talk less, listen more.
Right?
There's a line in Hamilton that says, talk less, smile more. Don't let
Right.
them know what you're against or what you're for.
Right.
And it was really kind of saying, like, stop talking and start listening. And that line is always stuck in my brain, which is sometimes you just smile and you listen.
In this job in particular, it's to my advantage if people don't know exactly where I am as I'm forming my ideas, because the more information I take in, I might, the needle may point this way, and I might take in information tomorrow and points it that way, and that needle is going to go back and forth a lot of times before I make a final decision.
Yep.
So the less I say, here's where I stand and take a position, it's hard to move off a position. It's easy to say I'm still learning, and I'll let you know after I've made a decision.
Which I will say thank you, because as a leader, we sometimes peg somebody and saying they just are one way. And what you've just said is that you really are looking at a situation and understanding the nuance and making decisions based on that, which obviously are good for the people that you represent, but that are the right from all your experience and all your learning to go forward in that direction. And not
Right.
just to be stuck on, this is who I think this person is, but to know that you actually are thinking and working and bringing in all the information. And I don't think people get that, Brad. And I'm not saying that to belittle. I really think people don't know how much work you and your colleagues actually put into this process.
Oftentimes, the talking heads or the folks who are on TV the most, the representatives, are invited to their TV shows to reiterate a position that they've already taken, irrespective of the evidence or the facts.
Yeah.
And it's far better to say, you know what, I need to learn more. I need to understand better. I need to dig deeper before I give you my assessments of what's happening, because it may not be what it looks like.
We're going to end on, for this part, on that, which I appreciate so much. My last section, which is fun, rapid questions, get to know Brad.
Okay.
And you can answer however, one word or give a little explanation. First question: what is your favorite sound?
Oh gosh, music. Unquestionably, it's music, but it's different kinds of music. Sometimes it's jazz. Last night I was listening to kind of bluegrass type music, just whatever mood I'm in. But if there's background music, I'm usually much happier.
Oh, beautiful. And what is your favorite color?
Blue,
Okay.
irrespective of politics.
Yeah, I got you. Favorite scent, smell?
Lilacs. My wife loves lilacs too, but if you get the whiff of lilacs on a walk, it's a nice day.
That's lovely. Who is your biggest cheerleader?
My wife, no question on that one.
And if you were going to have one meal, you could pick just one of your most favorite meals, what would that be?
Ice cream, appetizer of one flavor, main course of a different flavor, and of course have to have dessert.
And in the winter in Illinois, do you still eat ice cream? Just curious.
Every day, if it's there, I'll eat it.
Okay. Do you have a favorite book?
I was talking about this the other day. I think the book I most enjoyed reading, so different times I'm going to have a different favorite book, but John Adams by David McCullough. I was talking to someone, hey, so it was last night, who, do you read fiction or nonfiction and whatever? We were talking about reading the biography of John Adams. And even though he dies on July 4th, the same day as Thomas Jefferson, the book was so good that when it was over, it was like, oh my God, he died. I'm sad my book is done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. This is how I find the next book. It's from listening to someone like yourself, and then I write it down. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go get that book. And
yeah.
sometimes I'm like, I have too long of a list, but there's a lot of good books, and I will take that into consideration. What is your favorite word? Do you have one word that just stands out?
I don't, but there's one that stands out only because we were talking about teachers before. I had a psychology teacher in high school, and there's two things I remember about him. One, I talk about all the time. He started the class, it was an early morning class, started at 8, and he didn't say anything. He didn't give any instructions at the beginning of the term. He just closed the door and started teaching at 8 o'clock when the bell rang. And he made sure that what he talked about in those first few minutes was significant and substantive. And I've used that lesson many times over, because don't waste people's time. Just get to it, and you don't need to say anything. People will figure it out and start showing up on time. I don't know why I just happened to think of that, but to your question, words. He loved the word juxtapose and the way it sounds. So every time I hear the word juxtapose, I think of him.
Interesting. Favorite household chore?
There's no favorite household chore. Um, I find, even doing the dishes, I find there's a certain zen of finishing it when you finish the dishes and you've wiped down the counters and the kitchen is sparkly clean for the next day. There's a good feeling about that. I love working in the yard and just being outside and, whether it's putting seed in the bird feeders or this weekend I have to bring in the bird houses as winter comes in. There's just a certain cathartic aspect to all of that.
And what is Brad's superpower?
Sleep. I can sleep anytime, anywhere.
Wow, that's pretty good. And I think in your role, you do need to be able to get your sleep in when you
That
can.
that 5-minute power nap makes a big difference.
Yeah. And where would you all go if you could take a family trip? Everybody we talked about taking vacation with your son or a trip with your son. Where would you all dream to go if you could take 1 week and just all go together? And I know that's hard with your schedule, by the way.
Yeah, no, we're actually taking a trip later this year, hopefully. Everything works out. They'll go without me to Central America, which will be fun. We like traveling. When push comes to shove, the way you asked the question, you got one trip, you gotta go to one place. It's always the same place. It's Israel.
And I assume you've been to Israel how many times? Can you even count?
Could not even tell you.
Yeah.
More than I can count.
Okay. Well, on that note, I'm going to ask my final question, which I think is part of what you've just described, because I understand for me going there is amazing. And I've been there, as you know, many, many times. And I have family there and I've lived there. So I can understand why that is a special place. My last question is on joy. And one of the things that I have been thinking about, I've always thought about what is joyful, but even more so in this time that we're in, because I find that when we can find something that is joyful and share that and have that, it's really makes tough times a little bit easier, but it also brings a self fulfillment. And so what I want to ask you is, what is joy to you and what brings you joy? And then how do you as a father, a husband share joy? And as a leader, how do you share joy?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is being together with family is joyful.
Yeah.
And this is do as I say, not as I do. If you really want to have the joy, and I know when I do this, it's much better. When we're together as a family, whether it's my wife and my two sons or the Chicago family, which is my wife's siblings and their kids, or Denver family, my siblings and their kids, and my mom. If the devices are put away, we're not looking at our phones, we're there, we're present, that's real joy.
It's so simple. And I think about growing up and our Sunday night dinners, there was no even question if our minds were going to be on a cell phone,
Right.
So I think about that with the family and that's it's a beautiful image. So thank you for sharing it. And I was going to ask you the last part. When you are joyful, how do you think people see you?
So one of the things I love, I mentioned I like being around young people. And
Yeah.
we had dinner a couple weeks ago for Sukkot, actually, with some friends of ours. And they have 5 kids, 4 boys and a girl. Their daughter is our goddaughter. And so we had dinner with our friends and the goddaughter, her husband, and their 2 little girls. And we brought over some toys. Marble Run was one of them, which I played with my kids. And I sat on the floor and I just did Marble Run with her name is Charlotte, but they call her Charlie. And setting it up and seeing her screams of joy as the marble went down and through the maze of tubes was a blast. What I hope and what I enjoy when talking to young people is they see me as someone who cares about them. And if I take that to my job, and in my job, I work with people of all ages, seniors to kids in school. And I want them to see me as someone who sincerely cares about them and their future and their challenges. And I can't necessarily solve all their problems, but I can hear their problems, appreciate their challenges, and commit myself to try to help make their life a little bit better. And that's the joy of my work.
I'm going to end there. That's the best way to end. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Really a great honor and a great pleasure. And I know we're supposed to have coffee in person one day, but
Would
today
love to.
virtual, but you owe me a coffee.
I've got my cup.
Okay. And I have mine, but we need to be
Yeah.
together the next time.
Yes. All right.
Yeah. Hi, it's Liz. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Capital Coffee Connection podcast. Do yourself a favor. Turn off the doom scroll, shut down the noise, and remember, there's still a lot of good stuff out there. People are kind, and joy is real. Don't miss it. Share this episode with somebody who could use a reminder. Have a beautiful week, and don't forget to subscribe to the Capital Coffee Connection podcast right now. Ciao.